Good evening, and my name's Jenny Fisher, the editor of East London News, and welcome to the Tuesday show on today, the 8th of February. That's a nice date. We're going to cover two issues in the Tuesday show tonight. We're going to be looking again at the issue of war, whether we're going to see war in Europe anywhere soon, with Jack Halinski-Kirkpatrick. He came on our show last year to talk about the USA, so now we've got him on to talk about Russia. And this is actually pretty much a Partygate-free zone, so we won't be talking about Boris tonight. But we're also going back to our ongoing topic of racism in cricket. And we've got Unmesh Desai, Assembly Member for City and East on the GLA. He's going to be talking about why he would like us all to back the Bowl Out Racism campaign. And we'll also be having a look at the headlines where you are. So, first, Ukraine. I spoke to Jack earlier this afternoon, and I asked him, what is Putin up to? Boris organised almost a Partygate-free zone, but Boris organised a cabinet reshuffle today, that's all we're going to say, to avoid Partygate being discussed. I just wondered if Putin was trying to divert attention away from COVID and poverty issues at home by going to war. Jack said that wasn't quite the case. This battle over NATO expansion has been a long time in the planning. So here's the conversation I had with Jack earlier today. So, Jack, welcome to the programme. I would ask you what's Putin thinking about at the moment, but of course none of us knows that. But what does your crystal ball think? Why has Putin decided to take on Ukraine then? What's going on?
Yeah, well, that is a very interesting question. And I think, first of all, really, we have to, I think there's always a danger when we are looking at a event, basically, as socialists, as left-wing activists. We need to avoid kind of accidentally supporting our own ruling class. And I think there's been a concerted effort, really, on the part of the media to kind of present Putin as as the only villain here, basically, is single-handedly trying to invade Ukraine. But we need to, I think, take a bit of a step back, really, and look at things from an objective point of view, in a certain sense. And really, you have to go back a bit in time to kind of 30 years ago with the fall of the Soviet Union. Where here you had, in the kind of immediate aftermath, you had James Baker, who was the then US Secretary of State. He basically made a promise. I've got a quote here. He said that NATO's jurisdiction would not extend 1 inch to the east. And yet in those 30 years, you've had NATO extend 1,000 kilometers right up to the border of Russia. And you can, I'm no supporter of Putin, can just say that, but you imagine how the US would respond if, say, Colombia, then Mexico, then Canada, all started joining a military alliance headed by China. You could imagine...
Has this particular problem arisen because Putin's been sat there waiting for 30 years? I don't know if he's even been around all 30 years, but has he just been sitting there waiting for his chance and then finally thought, I've had enough, I'm going in?
Well, I think there is a certain amount of, it's an opportune moment, basically, to assert kind of some interests, if you like. If you look at the recent period, you can see that there's a crisis of US imperialism, basically. The US was defeated in Afghanistan with, running away with its tail between its legs, basically, defeated in Syria. And so I think, Putin really is a gangster on the world stage and can see he's using this as an opportunity, basically, to assert some of his interests. On the one hand, he's also, I think, concerned to some extent about the internal situation in Russia too.
Oh, so there's two things. He's probably always had ambitions to be more powerful in the world, so he's seizing his opportunity. But also he wants to show the Russian people that he's quite strong. Not only does he go swimming in the ice in winter, he also is quite a strong politician. So why pick on Ukraine? What have they done to offend him?
Well, I'm not sure if it's necessarily picking on Ukraine in general. I think that it's more. I personally, I do not think that a full-scale invasion of Ukraine is on the cards, really. But what I think that Putin really wants is to ensure that Russia is not encircled, basically, by foreign powers. And so I think really he would rather that Ukraine is a kind of neutral party, if you like, in between NATO on the one hand and Russia on the other. That's, I think, what he's trying to ensure. I don't think it's necessarily trying to pick on Ukraine.
Right. So how do the people of Ukraine feel about this? I mean, do they, obviously they're not enjoying being fought over like this, but I mean, there's stories on the BBC about them stockpiling and acquiring weapons, because in some Eastern European countries it's more common to hold weapons because military training and conscription are more common. So how do they feel, and how does their government feel?
Yeah, well, I think if you actually look at what Ukrainians think, you can really see how this issue has, in effect, been blown up a lot by the Western media, especially the US and Britain, actually. Because yes, so there are opinion polls, for example, that do say if Russia was to invade, then I've seen one that says 58% of all Ukrainian men would join, kind of insurgent kind of operations to fight against Russia. So obviously, Ukrainians would not necessarily, in the majority, be in favor of an invasion of Russia, but actually. I think, you can look at Zelensky, who's the president of Ukraine, who has even been saying, disagreeing with the US and Britain. He's saying that they're kind of, saying that war is extremely likely when it's not as likely. I think Zelensky is actually worried about, the Ukrainian economy, his own position. There's been hesitancy on the part of investors because of the prospect of war. And I think, you can see there are interviews as well with Ukrainians that you can see on Western media, where you have this Western journalist who is walking around the streets of various Ukrainian cities and think, oh, I'm so surprised. People don't think that a war is likely. And so I think, yes, there would be like resistance on the part of Ukrainian people if there was to be an invasion on the part of Russia, which again, I think is one reason why, a big reason why a full-scale invasion of Ukraine is ruled out. But I think that the vast majority of Ukrainian people do not think that that is likely either, really.
Yes, I think you're not alone in that. I mean, I've heard, again, comments on the BBC and the World Service and so on. I have a very limited range of listening, I'm afraid. I'm sure you're much more knowledgeable than me, but I've heard comments as well saying, look, Putin could invade, but he couldn't govern the country. It's a case of, oh, I've invaded. Ooh, what do I do now? So that's against it. So we've got two players. I'll ask you about the UK in a minute, but we've got the USA watching all this. We've got President Biden, a president much weakened, as you said, by the exit from Afghanistan and the manner of that exit. So what's Biden saying about all this, and should he be saying something different?
Well, I wouldn't want to give Biden any advice. First of all, I'm not sure he'd listen to me. I think Biden, we need to understand, is not a friend of the left. He's not a friend of the working class. But I think that he is intending from all of this really is a number of things. First of all, as we've discussed, that there is a crisis of US imperialism at the moment. In the past, the US was able to act as a kind of world policeman, if you like. Whenever there was a crisis, the US would be able to kind of intervene and stabilize things in the interests of US imperialism, but they were able to ensure a certain amount of stability. But that is no longer the case. There is a mass anti-war feeling in the United States. You look at the past few presidents, all of them have been anti-war in a certain sense, right? Like even, Obama, Trump, and Biden have all said, at least, right? Let's say that they've said they're anti-war. So the US is unable now to intervene militarily, putting boots on the ground, if you like, on a mass scale.
Yeah.
And they also want to carry out a bit of, it's in the media a lot, a kind of pivot to Asia, basically. Because they are relatively less powerful than in the past, they want to deal with China, focus all of their efforts on China. And so they do not want a war in Russia, basically.
But aren't China and Russia getting quite chummy at the moment?
Yes, yeah. No, I think for sure that there is a certain kind of alignment of interests between Russia and China, for sure.
So China might actually be the clever player, and the US might find itself trying to become China's friend, but China wandering off like a grumpy 10-year-old and going to play with somebody else, namely Russia. So that could all be quite interesting. Has Trump intervened in this, or has he not noticed?
Well, there has been a kind of more belligerent wing, if you like, of the Republican Party who are trying to show up Biden as being weak and frail on the world stage. So there is a certain element of that, if you like. But still, I mean, I think that if the US, I mean, I really do think that we can rule out, I mean, Biden himself has ruled out intervening militarily. I think it would be suicide, really, for any American leader to advocate intervention to fight against Russia. You imagine the casualties that would entail. It would be electoral suicide, really.
Yeah, well, I always thought war itself is objectively absurd. There you are, sat in your presidential or prime ministerial office, and you're having a disagreement with some other country. So you think, what should we do? Oh, let's kill some of them. And while we're at it, we'll kill some of our own people. I mean, that's essentially what war is. I think we should stop glorifying war, and maybe we'll have to stop calling it war with all its connotations. Maybe we'll just call it mass murder. Let's go mass murder. Anyway, that's my little rant. Finally, let's look at the UK. What's Boris said anything about it, or is he too busy with his other concerns? And has Starmer noticed and said anything relevant at all?
Yes, well, you mentioned Boris's other concerns. I mean, I think this is it's a bit of a present for Boris Johnson, to be honest. He charged off to Ukraine the other day in order to present himself as incredibly statesmanlike. But really, why is he doing this? Well, it's clearly an attempt, basically, a distraction from these very real problems that he is having at home. It's a very common policy, right, when a government's in trouble, to point to some sort of foreign enemy. In actual fact, it's very similar to what Putin is doing as well. So he charged off to Ukraine. He has been, warning the Putin that Britain will not flinch in the face of Russian aggression. But again, really, I mean, Britain is a second, if not third-rate power on the world stage, and to think that I think they were sending a few hundred British soldiers to the area, and I mean, Britain can do nothing really.
Well, they were sort of emergency trainers, weren't they? Because we don't send soldiers out to places any longer. We send they're just some people doing some training. So they join the army, and it used to be join the army and learn a trade. Now it's join the army and learn how to become a trainer. Okay, so Boris is basically doing his Winston Churchill act in the hope of having the same success. What's old Starmer up to? I can't remember hearing him say much about anything really recently, but what's he said about Ukraine? You notice?
Well, again, I mean, Starmer, as ever, is attempting to present himself as the sensible choice, basically, for the establishment. He is trying to paint Labour as the sensible kind of pro-business party, and again has been trying to use this as a kind of an attempt to look like he is an establishment figure on the world stage. So yeah.
So what can we, the ordinary people, do about it? I mean, should we write letters to Boris saying, please don't go, or please come out? Or is it, it's not quite as clear cut, is it, as some examples of foreign policy? Because quite often you're sort of writing letters saying, oh, can you take your troops out, or something like that? What should we be doing as sort of people who oppose war and don't want to go off and fight?
Yeah, well, I think that the first things we need to do really is oppose our own government and our own ruling class, because really it's despicable what people like Boris Johnson and many, there's a bit of a fight going on within the Tory party at the moment for people to try and succeed Boris Johnson, each kind of character appearing and trying to present themselves as more belligerent than the last. And that is really although I have said that full-scale invasion by Russia is ruled out, what they're doing by provoking or trying to provoke Russia in for their own short-term political or careerist interests, basically, is despicable behavior, because war, if it happened, would lead to lots and lots and lots of people being killed. And so, I think first things first, we need to oppose our own ruling class and the Western imperialism, basically, which has been provoking this whole situation.
Well, thank you very much for that, Jack. I think that was a very useful insight into the politics of what's going on with the Ukraine. And all I can say is that if you're right, well, if you're wrong and there is an invasion, then we shall certainly invite you back on to justify yourself, to hold you to account. But otherwise, it may not be quickly resolved, so we may need to invite you back on to give us a further insight of how things develop over the next few months. All I can say, the poor people of Ukraine sat there, wondering what's going to happen. They probably all want to get on with their post-COVID, getting their lives back together, and be thrown into this. Well, yes, if we ever do, so we may do. Okay, Jack, thank you very much, and we hope you come on again in the future. Thank you.
Thank you.
Right, welcome back. I hope you found that challenging. I think we all need to work a bit on learning a little bit more about what's going on in the rest of Europe. We haven't really been paying it much attention lately, and it could have a big impact on our domestic situation as well. So now I'm going to just give you one opportunity to take your interest a little bit further. We've got on Thursday this week, the Stop the War Coalition is holding a meeting it's an online meeting called No War in Ukraine, Stop NATO Expansion. And you'll be able to listen to some excellent speakers talking much further about the kind of detail which Jack was talking about. The speakers include the ever wonderful Jeremy Corbyn MP, and Diane Abbott MP, one of our local East London MPs. There are other speakers too who look very clever. Andrew Murray, I think he's the chair of the Stop the War Coalition. Christine Buchholz from Die Linke in Germany. They're even closer, so they've got more reason to listen. And Medea Benjamin from Code Pink, which is a grassroots peace and social justice organisation. So go onto the Stop the War website and look up the details for that and see if you can join in, and we can all keep up to date with what's happening. So that was Jack. And sport usually comes towards the end of a news programme. So now we're going to turn to cricket. It's 2 or 3 weeks now we've been talking about racism in cricket at county level and now at junior level as well. And Unmesh Desai, who is the Assembly member of the Greater London Assembly for City and East London, he went to the recent launch of the Bowl Out Racism campaign. And I noticed that he said he promised to do all he could to promote the campaign. So I contacted Unmesh and said, well, come on the Tuesday show. It was very hard for us to find space in our diaries, but we found 5 minutes today to overcome some technical difficulties and finally set up a conversation. So here's Unmesh explaining why he thinks this campaign is so important, why he backs it so enthusiastically, and why he thinks we should all get involved. So here he is talking a little close to the camera to begin with, but he's got a lot to say about this campaign and why it's important to him to work on racism in cricket. So here's Unmesh. So Unmesh, lovely to see you. So we've got a little cricket story we're going to talk about. Cricket, is that something that you're fond of, or
very much so, Jenny, and thank you for inviting me onto the program. Just like thousands of East Londoners, it's a sport growing in popularity, and especially with with the diversity of our communities. Some of the issues that have been highlighted by the crisis at Yorkshire Cricket Club are of great concern to people in East London.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, we've covered that a bit on the Tuesday show before, with various people coming on to talk about their experiences. But I see you went to the Bowl Out Racism launch.
Yes.
The other week. What drew you to that, Unmesh?
Well, so the relevant Commons Select Committee, the DCMS, Department of Culture, Media and Sports, they took evidence, including from the ex-cricketer, professional cricketer Azim Rashid, and they were sufficiently concerned, and this was a conservative chair as well, who felt that an initiative similar to kick it out in football was needed to counter institutional racism within the structures of cricket. And some of us then discussed the idea. And I'm glad to say, both as a London Assembly member for a city in East London, as someone who lives in East London, the initiative actually originated from a meeting in Tower Hamlets with a couple of local people, including the chief executive of Capital Kids Cricket. So we felt that under the auspices, they've been doing great work to promote cricket in disadvantaged communities, and under their banner to launch a specific initiative of Bowl Out Racism, which was launched at Lord's Cricket Ground last Friday, with the support of a week last Friday, with the support of the English Cricket Board, who were represented in the form of their chief executive and chair. And the idea is that a grassroots campaign, a bottom-up campaign that actually educates, changes attitudes, promotes diversity. It's good to see, that women's cricket, for instance, is growing in popularity all the time. But, there are also obviously class issues as well. And the barriers to full participation need to be effectively tackled.
Yes, this is
it.
Sort
of stereotype attitude that some communities are interested in some sports and not in others. We've got to make sure that those are open to all communities, of people from all backgrounds, gender, race, nationality. And hopefully the campaign, more than hopefully, the campaign will be of sufficient strength to make a mark on the beginning of the cricket season. I envisage a publicity drive around all the different cricket grounds up and down the country, messages in various brochures, programs, all the different outlets. I would also say that the four relevant cricket associations that serve London and the home counties, Essex, Kent, Surrey and Middlesex, they were represented at the launch as well. And it was good to see so many young people at the launch.
Yes, well, hopefully we'll...
You may have seen publicity on social media, but the ICC World Trophy, the 50 Overs World Cup Trophy, has been doing the rounds of schools and community groups all over London, particularly in East London. And if any of your viewers are listening in, and if you do want to host the trophy, I believe that we still have it in East London for the next 2 weeks, then get in touch with me. My details are on the website.
Oh, Unmesh, we shall probably
take
you up on that.
Jenny, and you can pass.
Oh no, don't
them on to me.
Go straight to Unmesh. He's easy to find, although hard to pin down. Unmesh, I saw that at the launch you said, that you were prepared, you were happy to promote this campaign as much as possible. So it's good to give you a chance to do so. And it is aimed quite a lot at young people as well. So what do you think the main purpose, the main direction of the campaign is? Is it at young people to try and dispel racism amongst younger crowds, or is it at cricket to dispel racism institutionally and structured in the sport?
In many ways, it's a long-term aim for the campaign that I'm particularly interested in. And of course, it's the future, the young, our young people, future generations. But it's really aimed at everyone. We got to tackle the problem head-on here and now. I mean, you've been active in the anti-racist movement as well, Jenny, and you know that it's persistent campaigning, education, challenging stereotypes at all levels. And ensuring that the relevant organizations have the will and then put some resources into an effective in a campaign, because the issues are not just in Yorkshire; they actually are prevalent up and down the country. There are more and more reports coming out now of what's going on at various cricket associations. And I saw in the newspaper that just late last week, that Lord Patel, who's now chair of Yorkshire Cricket Club, was complaining of a campaign behind the scenes to try to derail his efforts to reform Yorkshire Cricket Club by some powerful vested interests. I'm just telling your viewers what was reported in the Guardian last week. So hopefully a grassroots campaign can give strength to the reformers in the game.
The launch was just the first step, wasn't it? We have a lot more to do.
Absolutely. It's it's an issue that's that's not going to go away, and neither are we anti-racist campaigners. A lot of work and mountains to climb, but
we can do it together, can't we? Yeah. Well, we'll be back in touch, Unmesh, to see how we can work together on this in the future, and hopefully we'll see you. I know some of our readers in East London News have spoken to me about their concerns about travel across London, so maybe we can come back to you on that subject in the future as well. But I promised you this would be short, so let's leave it there for today. Thank you very much, Unmesh.
Thank you for inviting me, Jenny. Thank you. Take care. Be safe. Bye-bye.
Well, thank you again to Unmesh for making time to talk to me earlier today. And I hope we can all take him at his word. We've established, I think, how important it is to look at the sport of cricket and to deal with the racism that we found at county level and deal with the racism that we fear may be there at more junior level as well. We want an equal, fair access to cricket. And we want as well, I think, to encourage some of the other sports to come forward and examine their own practice. So cricket's been has had quite a lot of negative reaction to some of the recent exposures about racism, but at least it's been brave enough to, when totally confronted, admit something has to be dealt with. Some of the other sports are a bit behind that, so we need to work further on that. Also, I think it's very much, at the moment, Bold Out Racism is a campaign about the south of the country, the south of the UK, and perhaps we need to move that into the north as well. And I hope some of our viewers who are in the north of England, or the Midlands, will have a look at this campaign and perhaps consider launching capital kids cricket clubs in their own localities so that we can really go across the cricketing nation. For more information about Capital Kids Cricket or Bold Out Racism, well, you can Google Capital Kids Cricket, and Bold Out Racism is covered on their website. So thanks again, Unmesh, and perhaps you'll come back another day to talk about some pressing concerns. I know that people have talked to me about their concerns about transport in London, and perhaps we should have a dialogue about that at some point. Let me know if you would like that. Right, we're going to conclude the programme now by looking at some of our local headlines. You know I like to do that. So let's see what's going on. We'll start with at the west of East London and head east. I see that the main news on the Tower Hamlets website this evening is the news that the plans to renovate the Laden Street toilets in Spitalfields, I don't know if I've pronounced that properly, Laden Street, they've been agreed. So that's nice. I don't know what the renovation will consist of, whether they're going to turn them into a coffee house or just nicer toilets. If there's any loss of facilities in this development, it's going to be bad news for local residents and tourists and visitors. There are various problems in and around Brick Lane anyway, with and some of the market areas like Petticoat Lane, with there being very few, if any, toilet facilities. So I hope that there will be some toilet facilities kept in that redevelopment, whatever it is. The other news on the Tower Hamlets website is that there are some grants available. So look at that if you are in the hospitality, gyms, sports, or personal care businesses, because there are some grants available to help you bounce back from COVID. We've all been trying to find Tower Hamlets spending on COVID, so this is where it is. So if you need one of those grants, if you're one of those businesses, have a look and check out what's on offer. I do like as well, when we're looking at the headlines across the boroughs, to see if there are any common themes across Tower Hamlets and across East London. And you will see that I can't find on the Tower Hamlets website any reference to LGBT History Month, which some other East London boroughs have. I can't find any reference to National Apprenticeship Week, which is this week, and would have been a nice thing to hear about, to hear what's happening in all the boroughs. Some of them are telling us, some of them are not, and Tower Hamlets is one of those. And finally, on Tower Hamlets, the council has a vaccine bus. That's another big announcement on the website, which is great, that we're actually taking, not insisting the people come to the vaccine centres, but also having this a backup facility for the vaccine facilities to visit the people. So let's hope they get around the borough and that people take advantage of them. Certainly, I walked from the Isle of Dogs up to Mile End Ecology Pavilion Park to get my, I think that must have been the second vaccine. And that was quite an effort. It would have been nice to just go to a local bus. So there we are. That's a picture in Tower Hamlets. Let's add to it now, more briefly, from other boroughs. Hackney are also offering grants. So Hackney viewers, check out what's going on there. They've got a £1 million fund from which they're going to pay out grants of up to £45,000 to bring Hackney together. I'm not quite sure what that involves, but you can probably fill in the gaps. It seems to be quite wide and flexible. And they're also inviting residents to join the council's residents liaison group. And that is apparently going to have a direct influence on how housing is provided by the council. So let's wait and see with that one. It's good. It's obviously welcome news that councils have things like residents panels. But if you just elect, well, if the council is choosing which residents are on the panel, which is what happens in Tower Hamlets, where there's a couple of residents on the Housing Scrutiny Committee, if the council itself is choosing which residents are going to scrutinise it, it doesn't really sit right, does it? And those residents as well are not organically linked to any movement. They only really represent themselves. So I do think we are waiting to see a politician come forward and promise to include residents associations, TRAs, tenants and residents associations, representatives on their various panels and liaison groups, because people elected by tenants are obliged to report back to them. And I think that is a stronger kind of democracy. There you are, a bit of comment there. Let me know if you'd like to discuss that further at some point. There's lots of places in East London where that is potentially an issue. Newham has announced that it's has announced details of its budget. Its budget is, the mayor says, intended to support Newham residents during uncertain times. I'm not sure where the budget is in Tower Hamlets or what the main thrust of it is, but there's clearly something to discuss around best practice in terms of how budgets are made and what kind of consultation with residents takes place and so on. I'm trying to set that up as a focus topic for next week's Tuesday show, if everything works out okay. Newham is also starting a new project on making spaces safer for women. So well done, Newham. Thumbs up on that one. And they are celebrating National Apprenticeship Week. They have a whole week's worth of events. So let's hope that brings some good to Newham by way of getting some young people into apprenticeships. Right, moving east, we go to Barking and Dagenham. There's not much news from Barking and Dagenham because they don't have a very newsy website, but headlines include the residents are backing PSPO, public space protection orders, that is, to stop antisocial behaviour. I don't know about that, Barking and Dagenham residents, Barking and Dagenham people. Do PSPOs really help, or do they just move the antisocial behaviour a little bit further down the road? So I think that's a bit of an issue there. They've got a new young mayor, and again, she's, I believe the predecessor did as well, she's raising money to support domestic violence charities. That's charities working with the victims, the survivors of domestic violence. And Barking and Dagenham is also, common theme in Outer East London, having a crackdown on fly tippers. So there we are. We'll have one crackdown a month at least across East London. So finally we go to Redbridge, which again, Redbridge has got various events to celebrate lesbian, gay, bisexual and transsexual History Month, LGBT History Month, and they raised the flag. Tower Hamlets, we have a flag, but it's quite hard to get the flag raised. It's apparently a non-political decision, which is taken by the chief executive rather than the council as a whole. But the council, councillors in Redbridge appear to be very keen on raising their flag, and they've made their mark by doing so. Certainly in Tower Hamlets, we had we remember Lutfer Rahman, who was one of the first, who was the first mayor in Tower Hamlets to include in his opening address to the council when he was first elected a commitment to LGBT equality across the borough, and the council continued to work on that. We haven't heard quite so much about it, I think, from Tower Hamlets in later months, but well done, Redbridge, for putting the month on the map with your flag, if that's not too mixed a metaphor. They're doing a budget survey, which again chimes in with what Barking and Dagenham's doing, and whether we should look at the best practice of budget making. And they are also doing apprentices. So there we are, apprentices, LGBT month, heavily featured across our East London boroughs, and some different reactions in different boroughs as well. So let's think about the important budgets issue in the weeks to come. And that's nearly it now. All I can do is to remind you, please, to contact East London News, to contact me at East London News if you have any local stories which you would like to promote on the Tuesday show. Always happy to do a little interview with you during the week to feature a little report about what's going on in your area. Are you suffering from low traffic neighbourhoods? Has anything been done, improved, corrected? Let me know what's going on, and we'll fix something up to try to talk to you. Or if you have any interest in your budget your council is making, whether you've been consulted or whether you think consultation is all a sham, let me know, and we'll feature some more views next month. So thank you for listening, and we'll see you again, not next month, we'll see you again in just 7 days' time, next Tuesday. So, good night.